The historical record demonstrates that from the Bronze Age, our women have sought to demonstrate their propriety and virtue by covering their head with a diverse range of headdress, from the hoods and haircaps of our Celtic women to the wool coifs and scarves of the Vikings. But none is more ubiquitous and ancient than the veil, used by women from every Indo-European tribe for worship, fashion, practical use, and public life. In the Greco-Roman region, we have accounts as old as the 13th century BC to the veiling of a woman's head. During the days of the Roman Republic, it was mandatory for a married woman to have their hair covered in public life. This is also where we received the tradition of the bridal veil, or the flammeum, which symbolized a change of social status in a wedding and deterred evil spirits. Hold on to that thought. When Roman society became more decadent throughout the 1st century, certain women replaced this tradition and kept their hair open to the world, while more traditional Roman ladies kept their hair covered in public life. The social effect of this was a separation between the class of modern decadent women and the more traditional, virtuous daughters of Rome. Seems that no matter where you go, some women are just fit for the cobblestone. When our ancestors developed Christendom, they reinforced and broadened this ancient practice, seeing the woman as more obligated to virtue, regardless of her status, class, or even age. To the men and women of Corinth, who were likely the most devoid of virtue in society, Paul says that a woman must have her head covered in any form of worship, and that a man was to not cover his head, saying that there is no other practice in any church of God. Tertullian in the 2nd century brings shame to the fact that some women were abandoning the custom in favor of more elaborate hairstyles, yet he praises the women of Corinth for keeping to Paul's words, while targeting the women of Carthage, who were not enforcing the practice. In the 2nd century AD, we also see Tertullian uphold and even broaden the practice. He advocates that the veil be worn by unmarried women at the age of physical maturity, expanding upon the more common practice of the veils being done during and after marriage. When the nation-state of Rome was destroyed by the Germans, these traditions were far from lost, becoming more broadly accepted practice throughout the rest of European society. The enforcement of such social codes corresponds to the early development of Christianity in the regions of Europe. While the moral codes were taken for granted, the garments themselves underwent the most dramatic and diverse development throughout the medieval era, with each tribe and ethnos having their own unique expression of their modesty and elegance. In some folk German regions, the traditional use of veils for women in marriage was continued, called... Okay, I'm gonna need Josephine for this.
Unter die Haube kommen.
Which literally means to come under the hood, and this was used to describe women who were getting married. Now, at this point, I believe it is worth noting that I have never found a tradition in Europe which mentions face coverings for a woman as a matter of common life, unlike the Arab culture, which seems more disgusted by their women's faces than even we are. And who can blame them? Now, we are all likely familiar with the Victorian era, because hats became both fashionable and accessible to the common woman. This time period is well known because it is both romanticized and undermined by Hollywood, which, while being inaccurate, is more entertaining than reading a research paper. However, there was a dramatic change in social propriety in the mid-20th century, and that is to say that it was utterly done away with, for the modern social revolution had begun. During the Second Brother War for Juden, strong men were selected to the front lines, and those who stayed at home were women, the decadent elite, and the sway-maxed, over-socialized betas who couldn't hold a weapon or march in step. This dramatically destabilized Western civilization and left the sons and daughters of the West susceptible to new outside influences which came in the form of multiculturalism. Foreign men and women were welcomed into the West by the Act of 1948, amended in 1950, despite plenty of protest to the contrary. And these foreigners wasted no time at all expressing the disdain that they had for our women and their propriety. We could spend hours speaking of the moral and civil decay that came about because of this cultural revolution. With the strong men gone and a new generation of outsiders influencing every facet of the culture, the symbol of the European woman's purity was first attacked and then discarded altogether. And without such a vital symbol, the woman's public role could never be viewed the same way. No more was a woman under subjection and protection of her husband. No more was she protected from evil spirits. No more was her propriety deemed worth preserving by society. The daughters of Europa were like unto the shameless women of Rome, uncovered and uncared for. This, however, is not where the story has to end. There are two eternal principles which we may hearken to for guidance: the unity of our undying tradition and the logos that made them. Our people have already established 3 millennia of tradition and development for nearly every social setting, class, environment, from the most sacred to the most mundane. But why? It becomes necessary now to apply some logic to the classical arguments made by our ancestors for greater explanation. The sources are many, but Paul gives us the main 3. But because these things have been ubiquitous practice for all time, he doesn't feel the need to explain them. But in a corrupted culture, an explanation becomes more than necessary. First being the natural law argument. This can come from any first man narrative, whether it be Genesis and Adam and Eve, the Olympians and Pandora, or even evolution. The symbolic implications are the same, but we are going to utilize the first man narrative in Genesis because it is the most well known. Man, who is created first as the divine archetype, stands closer to God, both physically and spiritually. Woman proceeding from man as a secondary act is like him, but from the head to the toes, differences are able to be observed. Among these differences are the growth of her hair and its pattern, more delicate and refined. This unique growth to the female is indicative of her need for covering and protection. The evolution argument would focus more on indications of reproduction. It's more than I would be able to fit in this short video. Now, do we remember the phlegm eum worn by Roman brides to protect from spirits? This would sound odd to some Christians until we find the exact same thing in the New Testament. For this cause ought the woman's head to be covered, because of the angels. The assumption here is that there are certain metaphysical powers that we function with and around in our world. Our people, who have always believed in hierarchy of divine beings, would have taken these for granted. But what it takes to fulfill the logic here is that spirits not only exist, but they are in some way affected by what we do and what we wear in a specific way. Okay. Here's where we are going to have to think like our ancients in order to understand them, so this might sound a little bit odd to modern ears, but try to hear us out. There is a tradition from ancient days that you may have heard of called familiar spirits. These are either daemons or guardians, which are present with a person or peoples. The church calls these guardian angels or demons. Now, of course, one need not worry about their own familiar spirit, because it is familiar to you and your own kin, often coming from your bloodline or right. But when in public life you interact with other people and other spirits, not all of which have you or your best interest in mind, a woman with her head covered is physically identified with the spirit of her guardian. It could be a husband or father, etc. Think lineage. The effect of this is more difficult to define because it is spiritual, but it is communicating a woman's participation in a hierarchy which these spirits understand, seeing as it is a universal language to all. This is why specific garments are used for every ritual in which spirits are contacted in any way. Some for protection, some for communication, but a woman's head covering is for both. Now, I did say it was going to be a little bit odd, but allow me to give a little bit of common day proof. For those who are discerning and observant, we will be able to see in a common scenario how the gaps in our material visualization of a person are able to be filled by our ancient traditions. Say you waltz into a local market on Monday morning and see a well-dressed woman with a veil in aisle 3 next to the potatoes. Then you turn on to aisle 4 and see a woman with more skin showing than a freshly dressed turkey, and you don't remember what she was next to. If you are the least bit thoughtful about the nature of the persons in question, you are going to have 2 separate assumptions about these 2 examples. Some are purely physical, others are entirely spiritual. and can often be prophetically accurate and astute when considered. The reason is because the eye of man is physical, yet there is a spirit present also, and the mind collects the information of both. In the case of the woman next to the potatoes, she is protected from a wandering eye and an unfamiliar spirit. In the case of the second woman, she is symbolically open to all and protected by none. Now, the third and final argument, which cannot be enforced or addressed, is that of law. And the reason is because we are not able to appeal to an authority when there is no authority on the matter anymore. Restrictions and standards by way of ecclesiastical canons and civil codes have been enforced by our people for all time, but no more. We are not able to appeal to higher authority because those higher authorities have forsaken the very heritage that they were born to protect. But we need not abide their lies either. As for me, I will uphold the tradition of my people that the church and the state will not. I will cover the head of my women as every noble man before me has. And as more young people are already coming back to the ancient path, we will see the canons open again, or we will build our own. We will uphold the tradition that preeminated our existence, no matter what. And if that should mean we rebuild the institutions and uphold it by force of law, then wonderful. And if not, we will do it anyway. Now, to my kin and fellowship, God be with you all.